we are glad to have Asa Hutchinson, the Republican nominee for governor, and Mike Ross, the Democratic nominee for governor, with us for this gubernatorial forum sponsored by the Association of Arkansas Counties. Mr. Hutchinson, you get to open up first.
Thank you, Roby. I'm delighted to be here. And if you look at my relationship with county government, I've really been engaged with it for 30 years in different capacities. I've had the privilege of serving on election commissions. And let me tell you, I appreciate the work of the county clerks who do a great job in supervising our elections here in the state of Arkansas. My hat's off to you. And I'll never forget being on the election commission one night, waiting for the ballots to come in, and there was a Beatty Township. Well, it was about 2 a.m. in the morning. They hadn't brought their ballots in yet, so I called them, and I said, "Where's the ballots?" And they said, "Well, the poll watcher went ahead and went to sleep and said, bring them in tomorrow morning." Well, we did send the police to get those, but I understand the challenges that you face. I'm a candidate for governor. I'm asking for your support today, and I understand the partnership that we have. And I look at the creativeness of our counties. Judge Jerry Holmes, who's looking at economic development issues, Heber Springs, a water park, being creative. This is the kind of leadership that's important to you. I'm running on economic development and being the jobs governor because I understand your budget constraints and how important it is for us to have a growing economy so that some of your budget issues can be resolved and alleviated. I'll talk more about the overcrowding in your jails. We will talk more about the challenge you have in turnback funds. I'm sensitive to that. And what's important to me is that we have a partnership so that I can listen to you, we can get your views, because I agree with Governor Beebe yesterday, as he said, that of the 3 divisions of government in Arkansas, the counties are under the most financial pressure. And I understand that. You have, in many times, a shrinking tax base, but growing mandates. And I want to tell you that I want to resist mandates to our county governments that are unfunded, that simply cost you more money. So those are a couple of objectives I have. I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
All right, Congressman Ross.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to come and have a conversation with you, to spend some time with you today. Some of you I've known for most of my life. I see Nevada County back there. Others I represented when I was in Congress, and others I'm meeting for the very first time because I've never run for statewide office. So I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about me and who I am and why I want to lead this state. I want to talk to you a little bit about family. I think family is important. I think family defines our values, our morals, our character, and really who we are as a people and the kind of decisions that we make. On my mama's side, my grandpa Avery had a 3rd grade education. He raised 5 children on 100 acres of land. And I mean, he raised them off the land. Some of y'all in here know what I'm talking about. But he made sure they were in church on Sunday, and he made sure that each of them received the kind of educational opportunities that he never had. On my daddy's side, Grandpa worked on the short line railroad back home in Prescott. He passed when I was about a year old, and Grandma was about the age I am now, 53. And think back to 1962, she first learned how to drive a car. Then she got her GED, and then she moved to Little Rock, and she went to nursing school, and she got that nursing degree and came back home and was a nurse at our little county-owned hospital well into her 70s. My parents were public school educators. My dad was a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, and after about 50 years in education, he became a United Methodist minister. My family collectively taught me the values of faith, family, hard work, personal responsibility, and I think those values served me well as a member of the Nevada County Quorum Court, as a state senator for 10 years, and as a congressman for 12 years. And I just want you to know those same values will serve as my moral compass as I do my best to hopefully lead this state for the next 8 years. I've been married for 31 years to my best friend. Her name is Holly. She's a practicing pharmacist. We have 2 grown children and managed to even pick up a son-in-law in the past year. And we like him too. My wife says I'm supposed to say I love him too. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Former small business owner. I understand county government. That's where I started. I started on a quorum court in one of the poorest and most rural counties in this state. I know the challenges that many of you face, and that's why you need a governor who has county government experience, who has state government experience, and who understands the challenges that you face and is going to work with you. I'm very proud that 56 of the 75 county judges, 65 of the 75 county sheriffs have endorsed my candidacy, my vision for the future of this state, and I look forward to sharing that with you as we have more time this morning. Thank you very much.
A+ on times, guys. A+ on times. You each have a water bottle underneath your podium there, so if you guys want to break that out and get you some water at any point in time, feel free to do it. Our timekeeper's right in front here, so again, keep your eye on the yellow card for 30-second warning and a red card for your time is up. First question goes to Mr. Ross. It is about county jails and funding. That comes from John Montgomery, who is the Baxter County Sheriff. Currently, the counties face an overcrowding and funding crisis in their jails. While the state seems to be on a path to help with overcrowding, the issue of being reimbursed at $28 per day per state prisoner when these prisoners cost counties over $40 per day means that the counties lose millions of dollars each year by functioning as the largest collective state prison. In addition, counties have to pay medical bills for the first 30 days after a prisoner's sentence has been adjudicated. What do you propose to help with both the per diem reimbursement as well as these medical costs?
It's a very good question, and I've had a lot of discussions about this with the county sheriffs, which is one of the reasons that I think that 65 of the 75 county sheriffs have endorsed me. Look, the $28 a day rate, it has been there for about 15 years. It is well past time for counties to receive an increase. I know the Sheriff's Association, the Association of Counties are currently working on a proposal to bring to the legislature in the upcoming session in January, and I have told the sheriffs on numerous occasions that I am committed to finding the money to give them an increase that is long overdue. They perform an important function for the state in housing these inmates until we have beds for them within the state prison system. And I know there's a fine balance here, and I think we're going to talk more about criminal justice a little bit later on. But let me tell you, I mean, we've got a prison overcrowding problem, and it's getting a little better now, but just a few months ago, we had an all-time high, more state inmates in county jails than ever in the history of this state. And it's put a lot of pressure on our counties, and I know there's a balance there, because as you have empty beds, you want state inmates in some of them. It helps fund the operations of your jail, the operations of your county, but too many creates a dangerous situation for you. $28 is way too low, and it's my understanding the Sheriff's Association, the Association of Counties together are going to come forward with a recommendation, and I'm committed to trying my best to help them find the money to give them a daily increase for housing state prisoners, something they haven't had in about 15 years. You got my word, we're going to get it done.
All right, Mr. Hutchinson, what do you propose to help with both the per diem reimbursement as well as these medical costs?
I was speaking to a deputy sheriff in Jefferson County last night, and he was talking about the backup in their county jail and how it was costing the county, but also that they're overcrowded and it becomes a dangerous, potential violent situation and very hard for their jailers to handle. It's different than a maximum security prison. It's different than a medium security prison when you're talking about the county jails. And so it's a challenge. And whenever the reimbursement rate is at $28, and it varies from county to county, but it's usually from $43 to $45 or more that it costs the counties, that means there's a differential of about $15 per inmate that's being held that the county's having to absorb. And it's one thing to absorb a modest amount of prisoners that are backed up, but whenever it escalates, then the cost is even greater to the county, and then you add the medical costs on top of that. So I recognize it as an extraordinary challenge. And the state can't do everything. We've got budgets to balance just like you do, but this is a state responsibility, and the state needs to step up to the plate. And so, yes, I would support an increase of the reimbursement rate for our counties. But I would also want to alleviate the burden of state prisoners being backed up in the county jails in a quicker fashion. And I would want to work with you as to what the right solutions are there. Obviously, we need to have additional space so we can move them out of your jails more quickly. But in addition, we need to look long-term at whether we need to have more of a regional concept for these state prisoners. Will that save additional money both for the counties and the state and be more cost-effective? Because the two groups make up your backlog. One of them is those that are pending trial. Those are really your responsibility, but after they're convicted, they're waiting, being removed to the state prison. The second category of state responsibility are the parole violators that are brought back to the county jail. And so that has increased as well. So we need to address both the cost reimbursement but also the process and the lead time of getting our state prisoners out of the county jails. I look forward to working with you on both of those because I know how that really strains our county budgets that are already strained.
All right, and we're staying in this same subject arena here. Moving to our next question, Mr. Hutchinson, to you first. This is from Bill Hollenbeck, Sebastian County Sheriff. What criminal justice reforms would you plan in your tenure as governor, and how do you see them impacting us at the county level?
Well, first of all, I've enjoyed my history in law enforcement, working with our county law enforcement team. I've been a federal prosecutor in Fort Smith, which covered every county in the western half of the state, including Ashley County. I joke that the Western District of Arkansas was within one county of the Mississippi River. And so I covered a broad area working with our county law enforcement. And so I understand the challenge in illegal drugs in our communities. I understand the challenge that you have with reimbursement rates. Not only federal prosecutor, I've headed up the U.S. DEA, which is extraordinary experience I had in my life. I want to bring that law enforcement experience to bear on the challenge that we face. And I look at it, first of all, we need to do two things. We need to make sure we're locking up the violent offenders and not releasing them out on parole, because that creates a danger to our communities. Secondly, we need to work on changing behavior of those that we can change behavior. And that's where we need to we made a mistake by having a parole system that did not hold people accountable. They've tried to crack down on it, and as a result of that, we're starting to back up people. We need to have a consistent policy that will give us the best chance of changing behavior. And that means that if they know they're going to be tested, they know they're going to be accountable for not reporting, then they're going to change their behavior. And that is our objective. They know that if they create offense, they could go back to prison for a longer period of time than they are right now. We need to change behavior in our society. We need to have additional space as well. But it's also about drug treatment courts that are alternatives to incarceration, that I have supported when I was head of the DEA, holds people accountable, nonviolent offenders, but it's not sent them to prison, gives them a second chance in life. We also need to have effective reentry programs. The investment is so much greater because they're going to be released on parole. But if we can help them reenter, hold them accountable, give them a better start rather than just a $100 check or whatever it is and a bus ticket from prison. We need to have a help to them who are willing to get out there, get a job, and reenter society and do it successfully. And so it's a combination of additional prison space to make our criminal justice system work more effectively, helping us to change behavior through better parole system, more accountability, and more effective reentry programs that for those who really want a different start in life, they have the best opportunity for a job, to be employed, and be productive. And that's some of my goals, but it's something that we need to address together.
All right, Mr. Ross, what criminal justice reforms would you plan in your tenure as governor, and how do you see that impacting the counties?
Well, we've got a serious problem when you think about it. We've got around 2,000 inmates backed up in county jails. There's some that say we're going to have to build a new prison. I think the jury is still out on that. I can tell you, if we have to build a new prison, it needs to be tied to meaningful reforms. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. We need tougher sentences, but we also need smarter sentences. I'll give you an example of what I mean by tougher. Those that involve stealing a firearm, those who are repeat offenders. Just in Little Rock, auto thefts, home burglaries, 75% are being committed by people who have been to prison before. 45% of them are being committed by people currently on parole. For those, I think we need tougher sentences. We need to send a message to the people that continue to break the law and do repeat offenses. But we also must have smarter sentencing. I think it was Governor Beebe that first said it, but we need to make sure that we're locking up the people we're afraid of and not the people we're mad at. We've got to look at alternative sentencing programs, smarter sentencing programs. 2 counties, Union and Columbia County, are doing that right now. They've got a great program down there where they do an assessment of those who get time, and they give them a choice. You can do the prison time, or the assessment may say that what they really need is drug treatment. So if they go through the drug treatment program, they don't do the time. And of course, they're held responsible and accountable through the parole officers and the parole system. Others, they determine, need a GED. Some need to learn a trade. They need to learn a skill and get a job. And so they do this assessment, and then in lieu of prison time, they look at assigning them to something like this, where they report and are accountable to the parole officer. Just in those 2 counties, for those who've been through the program, statewide, our recidivism rate, the revolving door issue we have in the state prison, is around 50%. For those who have been through this program in those 2 counties, the recidivism rate is below 4%. And just those 2 counties have saved the state over $4 million a year in 1 year. So we got to have tougher sentences. We got to have smarter sentences. I think it's going to take a combination of those. You know, some folks are simply addicted to drugs, and yet we send them down to the prison system. We spend $25,000 a year. They're not professional criminals when they get there, but after we put them through prison and criminal school, guess what? They're a professional criminal when they come out of there. That makes no sense at all. We got to make sure we have beds for the violent criminals, for the dangerous criminals, and for those that we're afraid of, and we got to be smarter about how we sentence the others. Let me tell you something else we need to do in this country and in Arkansas. We're a top 10 state for men killing women. We're a top 10 state in America for men killing women. I'm the only candidate in this race with a plan to empower and protect domestic violence survivors, and I'm real proud of that plan, which includes training for law enforcement, more shelters, and I'm committed to working with each of you in your county, because I think it sends an important message as a state and as a county that we're not going to tolerate domestic violence in Arkansas.
All right. All right, Mr. Ross, you get to answer this next question too first. It relates to 911 services. When 911 services began in Arkansas, they were supposed to be completely funded from user fees attached to telephone lines. Counties now find themselves subsidizing 911 across the state to the tune of about $20 million a year. What will you do as governor to help with this problem?
Well, I think most of you know the problem. Everyone used to have a landline and a cell phone, and now too many only have a cell phone. And so we got shrinking revenue. And so, you know, I'm committed to working with you to try to find a solution to that problem without increasing taxes. But I'll tell you something else that I think would help is each individual county is out there bidding their 911 system. And we've got some small counties out there. One of the things that I would be interested in at least having a conversation with the Association of Counties about would be getting to the state, you know, the Department of Finance and Administration, for example, they do the bid for all state vehicles. I think the state could play a role in assisting you in terms of coming up with a bid process so that we can competitively bid the 911 system as a state, and therefore our counties, especially some of the smaller counties, I think would get a much better rate. In fact, I've been told all the counties would get a better rate if we did that. So I'm committed to partnering with you. We've got some rural counties that still have a lot of challenges with 911. Even larger counties have challenges too because they've got so many more people and the shrinking revenue. And so I think that's one of the things that we could do to be of assistance is try to pull all the counties together in terms of coming up with a competitive bid that would lower the cost of operations for you.
Mr. Hutchinson, on the subject of 911 funding, what would you do as governor to help?
Well, there is a problem because, and it's an interesting statistic that I understand about 80% of the calls that come into the 911 system are from cell phones. And this shows the whole trend of our society and the use of cell phones, and it makes sense when you think about it. When there's an emergency, you're not always at a landline. But it also reflects the fact that we've got our funding system structured in a wrong way, where we're more dependent upon the revenue from landline excise tax versus coming from cell phones or other revenue source. So I absolutely agree that we need to stabilize the funding so it is not as significant a burden on the counties. And it's a matter of finding the right balance on the assessment for their cell phones and landlines to get the right combination to relieve that burden. And I'm happy to work with you on that. And by the way, I do applaud the counties and for all extraordinary work that you've done in being responsive to our emergency callers. And I agree that we need to look at efficiency as well. We need to hear from you more, but I understand Pulaski County has one system and Roanoke County has 5 call centers, and they vary from county to county, and there's reasons for it because every county is different. But the more we can do in terms of efficiency and the proper delivery of our services, then the better off the taxpayers are. So we're happy to work with you and listen to your proposals on that.
Gentlemen, I know you both wish you probably were specialists in the accounting field, judging by all of these funding questions that we're getting here. We're seeing a theme. We're going to depart from that a little bit. We're going to take a question from Crystal Grady, who is the Boone County Clerk. Last session, we saw a bill to end all special elections at a county level. Unfortunately, counties find themselves in times of crisis and sometimes have to quickly address issues such as the need for new jails and public safety issues. Do you think counties should have the right to have local control to bring these issues before the voters in special elections, and how would you help to keep special elections in place for critical needs, Mr. Hutchinson?
I think you have to have local elections for local purposes, and the schedule of those elections can be determined by the county. You know, you want to have efficiency. You want to make sure it makes sense for the voting public. And, you know, it's very disappointing whenever you have such a low turnout in a special election. And so I'm not an advocate of increasing the number of special elections. I'd like to have more efficiency and try to have as many issues resolved in the general election as possible, because that's the greatest expression of democracy. So I'd like to have more in the general election time frame. But there's always a need for a special election. It could be an urgent matter that's resolved. It could be, you know, and there is a legitimate need for special attention. It could be for an economic development tax. You know, ideally that's in the general election ballot, but there might be some urgent need with an industry that's looking at coming in that you would need to have a special election. But I also recognize that this is a cost issue for the counties, because the special elections cost the counties additional money each time, and that's another reason to try to increase the efficiency. So this is an example of not something that we need to mandate from the state level. I think we just need to work together to diminish the number of special elections, but also recognize you need to have that flexibility from time to time to have those for special needs and unusual circumstances.
All right, Mr. Ross, do you think counties should have the right to have local control to bring issues before voters in special elections, and how would you keep special elections in place in these instances?
Absolutely. The answer is yes. Our county officials, they're elected by the people. They understand the needs of their respective counties a lot better than any politician in Little Rock. And if you have a need for a special election, you should be able to call it. And let me just say that, building off of that, I have sat where many of you have sat as members of a quorum court in your respective county, and I understand the challenges you face. I understand how tough it can be. Governor Beebe, who I'm so proud has endorsed my positive vision for the future of the state, discussed with you yesterday about he understands that of all the governments out there in Arkansas, our counties are the ones that are squeezed the most, and that's why, as governor, my door is going to be open. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm not going to pass or sign any legislation that provides an unfunded mandate on our counties. You've got my word on that.
All right, sticking with you, Mr. Ross, let's go back to some budget issues again because they're so much fun. We have a graphic even to display here. You can see it on the screens. This is from Judy Beth Hutchinson, who is the Clark County Treasurer. Counties are established as a division of state government and assume many mandated responsibilities from the state for this reason. However, general turnback to our counties has only gone from $18.9 million in 1981 to $23.6 million in this latest fiscal year. Considering inflation, this number would be $54.3 million, or almost $31 million higher than it is. What will you do as governor to put counties back on track with the amount of revenue that counties feel they should be receiving? Mr. Ross?
I understand the issue of county general turnback funds. About the only increase you've seen in about 30 years, I think, was under Governor Beebe. You got about a $4 million bump under his administration. I'm committed to working with the Association of Counties to find the revenue, to continue to build on that and improve, because, as I said earlier, I understand the squeeze you are under. But I think this is a good place to have a little discussion about revenue. You know, my opponent has a tax cut plan. He says he's going to cut $100 million in taxes in year one, and then he'll worry about balancing the budget and funding education, Medicaid, and public safety. They tried that in Kansas. Just Google Governor Brownback, who's ACE's buddy, out in Kansas. They've got about a $350 million deficit this year. I think Congressman Hutchinson spent too much time as a powerful lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and as a voter in Virginia. I don't think he understands. This is not Washington. This is Arkansas. Money doesn't grow on trees. We don't print money. We don't deficit spend here. And Governor Beebe has made sure we don't. You know, ASA was running against Governor Beebe back in 2006. He said, elect me and I'm going to cut the sales tax on groceries all in year one. Then we had the worst economic recession since World War II. And guess what? If we had cut all the sales tax on groceries and then had that recession, you would still have teachers, firefighters, and policemen laid off today. We would not have been one of 4 states in America with a balanced budget. I have a tax cut plan too, and I'm doing it the way Governor Beebe took the sales tax off groceries, in a fiscally responsible way. He said Beebe's approach was an empty promise. Guess what? 7.5 years later, 80% of the sales tax on groceries has been lifted. I have a state income tax plan too. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to make them lower. We're going to make them fairer, but we're going to first balance the budget. We're going to fund education. We're going to fund Medicaid. We're going to fund public safety. And then as we have revenue growth, and we always do, we're going to balance the needs of the state, things like county general turnback funds, and lower and fair taxes for working folks. Because if you make $34,000 a year in Arkansas, a single mom making $34,000 a year is paying the same state income tax rate as someone making $340,000 a year, or someone making $3.4 million a year. There's nothing fair about it. I'm going to fix it, but we're going to do it the way Beebe took the sales tax off groceries. We're going to protect our counties first and do it in a fiscally responsible manner.
All right. Mr. Hutchinson, county turnback funds.
Well, we were getting along real well for a while. You know, and the fact is, Mike, you have very little credibility about talking about balanced budget. When I was the United States Congress, which was a long time ago, but you took on after I left. When I left Congress, we had a balanced budget. When you left Congress, we had a $1 trillion deficit. And so there's a little bit of difference in credibility. I actually lowered taxes in Congress for the first time in 16 years, and we balanced the budget. It's the last balanced budget we've had in our nation when I left. And while Mike has been in the United States Congress helping to pass health care that has hurt us all, while he has been in the Congress supporting the President's agenda of heavier government burdens on us here in Arkansas, I've been in the private sector actually working to create jobs and to build a business and to do the things that we all do in the private sector. And when it comes to Arkansas, you know, I have a $100 million tax reduction plan. Mike has a $600 million tax relief plan. He has promised $600 million in tax relief. He has promised $40 million in tax relief to the manufacturers. He's promised pre-K education for everyone, even if you make up to 400% of poverty. He's promised, and we do have to balance the budget. And so my tax plan, $100 million in relief for the income tax for us to create jobs and be competitive, as Governor Beebe said, is credible and is prudent, was the words that he used. And so we have to set a vision that we can grow our economy, because the challenge that you face are shrinking revenues. And how do you increase revenues and increase our tax base? It is by growing our economy. And we see dynamic growth in Texas, and he pokes fun of Kansas, but they've got greater growth than we have in Arkansas. You look at Mississippi, growing at a greater pace of growth. And if we're going to match what's happening in these other states, led by conservative Republican governors in many circumstances, we've got to be competitive in our tax rate that is out of whack right now. A 7% income tax rate that my plan is to reduce it, starting with the middle income. Now, Governor Beebe signed these pieces of legislation to give us tax breaks in the future, and I've set up a goal that is reasonable and prudent with $100 million in tax relief. And obviously, we're going to balance the budget first, just like I did in the United States Congress. We're going to stimulate our economy and create growth to expand our tax base, and that solves problems in this state, whether it's education, whether it is improvement in roads, whether it is providing 911 services. We can do that by a growing economy.
All right. We're going to stick with the rules of our forum and move on to our next question, as tempting as it is to allow for some rebuttal on all this. All right, question number 6 comes from David Hudson, Sebastian County Judge. It is related to county funding again. Mr. Hutchinson, you'll be first with this question. As a follow-up to the general turnback question, in 1999, Act 1044 was passed. Within this act, it stated that it is the intent of the General Assembly in the transition to a state-funded deputy prosecuting attorney system to provide an appropriate and adequate level of legal representation through deputy prosecuting attorneys in all areas of the state. However, the state could not yet fund all deputy prosecutors and left counties with a bill of about $5.5 million per year, which comes directly out of turnback. What will you do as governor to ensure that this transition resumes and the state assumes the financial obligation it originally intended to be responsible for?
Judge Hudson, that's a great question, as you always pose, and a difficult question. And really, you're talking about let me broaden the question, and that is to the funding of our criminal justice system, which is foundational to stopping crime, reducing crime in Arkansas. It's foundational to providing citizens access to justice. And so who should bear the responsibility for funding our criminal justice system? Our judiciary, our prosecutors. And right now, the state shares in that responsibilities, but the counties bear a bulk of that. I think it's a fair discussion to say with shrinking budgets at the county level, with growing population, and with reduced turnback money per capita, we need to rethink this again. And who should bear what's the right balance in bearing the responsibility for our criminal justice system that is really key and instrumented at the county level. And so I'm happy to have a further discussion on that. That's a $5.5 million shortfall, and we need to look at making that up. But also, I'd like to broaden the debate again to see if there's a better way of allocating some of the expenses for our criminal justice system in Arkansas.
All right, Mr. Ross, on the deputy prosecutor funding question, how would you address this as governor?
I'll work with the Association of Counties. This is what I'm talking about, unfunded mandate. This is an unfunded mandate that dates back to 1999. We need to review all unfunded mandates and address them in a fiscally responsible manner, and I'm committed to working with our counties on these unfunded mandates, just like this one, to make sure that we, make up for any unfunded mandates we put on you in the past like this, and find a way to be partners and find a way that we can afford to do it in a fiscally responsible way. And that right there is a good example of why I will not sign any bill that puts an unfunded mandate on our counties, period. By the way, Governor Beebe did not call AAC's tax cut plan prudent. He said it was prudent to cut taxes for working families. He read ACE's tax cut plan, and then Governor Beebe endorsed me.
All right. Mr. Ross, you get the first answer on this next question here that deals with just kind of an overall theory on your approach to county government. This is from Deborah Buckner, the Pulaski County Treasurer. Counties are a very effective and efficient method of government working closely with all citizens of Arkansas. Their success is vitally important to the success of our state. As governor, what are your top county issues and how do these rank in your overall platform?
I think first and foremost is having an open door policy. You've been elected by the people within your county. You speak for the people in your county, and as your governor, you should have an open door policy. You are the people that I'm going to work with and I'm going to listen to on issues that affect your counties. Secondly, I think that we've got to take a look at your emergency management system in every county. Some of y'all are spread real thin on that. I know the state provides some training, but in some counties, the county judge's clerical staff is serving as Director of Emergency Management. I've heard from a lot of county judges, I've heard from a lot of county sheriffs that we need greater partnerships between our counties and between the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management and the state of Arkansas in making sure that those functions are not only available but can be staffed in a way to bring services to the people when you have an emergency crisis in your area. And I understand some of the rural counties, maybe we could even look at some rural counties sharing a director. But I've heard a lot of judges, I've heard a lot of sheriffs talk to me about the challenges that they have in trying to fulfill the role of having a county director of emergency management. I think that's a big issue, and that's something certainly outside of jail reimbursement and turn back. Those are probably would be at the top of my list, but quite frankly, I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to let you help me determine and define what are the issues most important to your county. I'm going to be a good listener. I'm going to be your advocate. I'm going to be your partner, and together we can do great things for Arkansas.
Mr. Hutchinson, your top county issues for your platform.
Well, we've identified a number of issues that need to be in the top priority of working with our counties, including the jail reimbursement rate, including the turnback funds. But specifically, a couple things that I think are important. I will have, as governor of Arkansas, a group of county judges that will serve as my counselors. The Association of Arkansas Counties do a terrific job. But I also would like to have a circle of county judges that I can listen to, that I can bounce ideas off, and that can be a listening board for me, as also make sure I get the ground truth from you. So we will work very closely in making sure my door is open, but also we have a structure in which we can have that relationship. Secondly, I look at the counties, and I agree with Mike that the emergency management is a key part of it. I've got a little background in emergency management that we've got to really look at protecting against potential disasters, whether it's a tornado or the New Madrid fault, which we've got to practice for. But the other thing is our veteran service officers. Our veterans who are increasing in numbers, coming back after served our country in tremendous fashion and great sacrifice, and our counties with their veteran service officers play a very critical role in helping guide them through the difficult process of disability claims, of health care claims, and it would be a priority of mine to look for ways to support our veteran service officers in the counties to a greater extent and make sure you have the support from the governor's office that you need. And finally, I respect Governor Beebe so much, and I fully expected him to endorse Mike Ross. There's no doubt about it. But he, in fact, did endorse Mike Ross out of the gate expectedly, and Mike gets his timing a little bit off there. He actually saw my plan subsequent to that, and he's been very fair. Despite the endorsement of Mike, he's been fair commentary, and he indicated it was a prudent plan, so I appreciate his fair approach to that, and clearly he did that after he endorsed Mike.
All right. Last question, gentlemen, and Mr. Hutchinson, you get to answer this one first, and we even have a lovely picture of our great leader up there. On January 1st, 2015, Mike Jacobs will wake up after serving 15 years as the Association of Arkansas Counties president and 24 years as Johnson County judge. What recommendations will you have for the judge as he enters this new phase of his life, Mr. Hutchinson?
Is that to me, Ron?
That is to you, yes, sir.
Well, Judge, let me tell you, I'm going to give you some really heartfelt advice here. You've got an extraordinary public service career. You've been elected to office multiple times. You served across the state. My only advice to you is don't run for governor. You would be tough. You would be tough. Seriously, we wish you the best as you look to future endeavors, and thank you for your great service. And what it reminds me of, though, is really the importance of public service, but also the importance of family and other responsibilities. And, you know, I've been blessed in my life with a wonderful wife of 41 years, and my wife Susan is here. Where are you, Susan? She's over here. She's my bride of 41 years. I have to explain that because when people see her, they think I've married a child bride. And very proud of her, though, and I'm proud of the family. Some of you have seen one of the ads I have with my granddaughter, who calls me Papa. And family's important, and I cherish the family. It's one of the reasons I left Washington 8 years ago to come back here to build my future and to offer the experience I've had in executive leadership, in legislative work, to the people of this state as governor. And so, Mike, I wish you well in your future, and like I said, don't run for governor.
All right, Mr. Ross.
I'd like to thank Mike for 24 years of dedicated public service. He's done a lot to make Johnson County an even better place for people to call home, and he's made a lot of sacrifices along the way. His family's made a lot of sacrifices along the way, just as each of you in this room have over the years. And Mike, I can't thank you enough. I congratulate you for what you've done. That's 24 years of experience in county government. That's 24 years of knowing what works and what doesn't. And you know, my grandpa, he only had a third-grade education, but one of the things he taught me was you should surround yourself by good people. And Mike Jacobs is the kind of person I'll be looking for to serve in my administration. And the fact that he's endorsed my campaign for governor has absolutely nothing to do with that.
All right. Closing statements. Mr. Ross, you get to close first. You get 3 minutes. And Mr. Hutchinson, you'll get 3 minutes after that.
A lot of our counties are struggling. Every county, large and small, has challenges as it relates to revenue. Here's what I think we've got to do. I have a positive vision for the future of this state, and it's focused on education. I've said I want to be the education governor because that's how you create jobs. That's how you create economic development. I've been doing job creation all my life. And you can have the best site, you can have the best infrastructure, the best rail, the best roads, but at the end of the day, before a company makes an investment in your town, they're going to do a job market or labor survey. And too many times, in towns large and small, we simply don't have an educated, trained, and skilled workforce available to meet that industry, and they go on down the road or they go to another state. So here's what I think we got to do. We got to start sooner, we got to finish stronger. I have a pre-K plan. It's about giving parents more choices, not less. If you're a parent and you got a 4-year-old and you want them in a pre-K classroom, there should be a desk for them, regardless of your income and regardless of your zip code. That is long-term. Short-term, I think we've got to have a renewed commitment to career tech. I still call it VOTech. But we need greater partnerships between high schools, community colleges, technical schools, and existing industry, specific to a region of the state, because what you may need training on in Northwest Arkansas may very well be a different thing that you need trained on in Southeast Arkansas or Southwest Arkansas or Northeast Arkansas. But these young people who do not choose college, they can learn a skill, they can learn a trade, they can get a certification, and in doing so, they can get a good paying job, which helps the revenue in your county. It helps the revenue in this state, and I'll tell you something else it does. It helps provide this state with that educated, trained, and skilled workforce we so desperately need. And we got to continue to make college within reach for more young people. You look at 100 ninth graders today, 20 of them won't finish high school. 40 of them will go to college, but only 20 is graduating college. What about the other 80? I think we've got to have that renewed commitment and focus on career tech. I think that is an important part of our future. And as governor, I'm going to be the education governor. That's how you become the jobs governor. And let me tell you something. Together, we can do great things. We can do great things for your county. We can do great things for this state. I humbly ask for your vote, your support. My website is mikeross.com. And finally, let me just say this. Have y'all seen all those ads they've been running against me on TV? I hope you have. They've spent $5 million on them. Misrepresenting the truth, distorting the facts, and lying about me and my record. Here's the truth. National Journal said I was one of the most independent members of Congress each of the 12 years I was there. NRA gave me an A+ rating each of the 12 years that I was there. I received awards from the U.S. Chamber, NFIB, the National Association of Manufacturers, and the list goes on and on. And by the way, the only time Nancy Pelosi had an opponent, I gave the nominating speech for her opponent with her sitting on the front row. I think you deserve to know the truth, and I think it says a lot about candidates when they misrepresent the facts, distort the truth, and lie about the other's record. And I'll leave you with this, something to think about. If a candidate won't shoot you straight on a TV ad, can you really trust them to lead the state? Thank you very much.
And Mr. Hutchinson, I'll give you an extra 15 seconds in addition to your 3 minutes there, just to be fair.
You know, one of the great things about campaigning across Arkansas are the incredible stories that you see. I was in Conway, and I met a gentleman who is 29 years of age. He got out of college. He had played football, but he wanted to start his career, and he saw the Fayetteville shale being developed and the gas exploration in Faulkner County and different counties across Arkansas. He says, let me get started in there. But he couldn't find an opening. So he finally said, well, tell me what no one else will do, and I want to do it. And they said, well, we need cleanup services. He borrowed $5,000, started a business. Today, it is a $30 million revenue business with over 300 employees, and he's 29 years old. That's an example of what Arkansans can do, willingness to work, grow the economy, create jobs, and that is actually a model as to what we need to do in this state, because that is our future. And I look at what we need to do. I've talked about a number of things, and we agree on the importance of career tech. I've got a plan that's very specific that we need to follow the state funding to go to the two-year colleges and the high schools that are training our young people for jobs. And these are technical jobs that can be in the workplace that can help us to bring industry and provide jobs for them. I've also talked about computer sciences, and I've hoped you've seen my ad with my granddaughter Elabeth. And I'm not sure the ads that he's speaking of, but our ads have been positive and straightforward and true. And I've talked about Elabeth, who's the inspiration for computer science in every high school in Arkansas within 4 years. Why do we need that? 30,000 high school graduates, if only 20% take computer science, that's 6,000 new graduates that can computer program in Arkansas. That's good paying jobs for them, but it's also creating entrepreneurs that can drive our economy and change the dynamics of our state for the future. This applies to every economic status that you can imagine in Arkansas. I saw some kids the other day that were minority, and they raised their hand and they thought that more than 40% would be taking computer science in the schools. This is the vision that I offer for this state. And if you want a jobs governor that will help create jobs and grow our economy, then I am your person. And yes, education is a key part of that. That's my computer science vision. It's college preparatory work. It's a career education. And it's also pre-K. And I fully support expanding the existing pre-K program in Arkansas. But let's fund the existing program that's underfunded now before we create a new program. Very simple, straightforward. That is how you balance a budget. That's how you grow the private sector of our economy. And I'm a little bit distressed that Mike acts like he's the only one being attacked in this campaign. But this is a grown-up business. We're going to be attacked. It's going to be a tough 80 days down the road. And I trust the people of Arkansas to make good judgments, to believe in the truth, and to understand the truth, and to seek for the truth. I'm asking for your support for governor because I know we can grow this state and build an economy for the future that will help our counties, build our schools, and draw young people to this state. Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Ross, Mr. Hutchinson, I think Arkansas has two very passionate choices for governor. We appreciate your willingness to serve, your past service, and your willingness to serve in the future. Let's give them a round of applause again. And the festivities are not done yet. Judge Jacobs.
You know, several times over the years we've sang a song. We've got two guys kind of duking it out up here today. And by the way, advice not running for governor, I didn't need that because that wasn't in my mind. But I come up with a new one. I might become a boxing promoter at some point, you know. I think there's an opportunity there for economic development. Anyway, everybody stand up. We're going to sing You Are My Sunshine, and we're going to let each governor candidate decide which one we're singing to, okay? Join me. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Go away, son. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Thank y'all. And I'll tell you, standing here close enough to hear them both, it's a good thing they're not auditioning for best talent or singing. But anyway, thank y'all very much.
You know, it was a very positive debate addressing specific issues that our counties have until Mr. Ross decided he needed to go on the attack. And that's understandable when you're running from behind in a race. But one of the things that he constantly emphasizes is that he had one of the most independent records in Congress, that he's running not as a Democrat or Republican, but he's just motivated to serve all the people. Well, the fact is, he has said that he is running to save the Democratic Party. And that is about as partisan of a statement as you can make. And so I think his motivations and his agenda is undermined in terms of his independence when in fact he is running as a partisan. And I think it's reflected in the debate today. But beyond that, it was a very good debate. I was pleased with being able to talk about really the challenge that our counties face. So with that, I'll let you ask questions.
Which issue out of the county jail, 911 funding, special elections, which issue were you most pleased with as far as sharing your goals for?
Well, I think the key thing is the prison reform, and on our effort, one, to go after the crime problem in Arkansas that we have. Secondly, we need to relieve the counties of the backlog in their jails. We need to increase the reimbursement rate. This one costs some money, but secondly, we're going to have to look at how we're going to solve the prison problem. And so I think I presented, because I was the first candidate to offer a crime reduction plan in this state and recognize the need for additional prison space. Now that doesn't mean we have to build a $100 million prison. I think we have to look at innovative solutions. I think we have to probe deep as to what options there are out there to solve the problem that we face right now in the most cost-effective way for the taxpayers.
How much do you want to increase county reimbursement?
Oh, I think you have to look at it, there's two needs that they have. One is an increase in the county turnback funds, and the other one is the reimbursement rate. And so you'd have to do a little cost accounting. Right now, they say the counties are being reimbursed $28, but it's costing them $43 to $45. So I think we need to look at those fixed costs that they have, look at that deeply, and try to determine what is a fair increase in that reimbursement. But I want to do some good cost accounting, bring on my accounting background before I give a specific figure for that.
Where would the money come from?
Well, it's just like everything else. You've got to, one, balance the budget, and then you've got to meet our adequacy requirements in education and meet the other needs of the state and higher education and balance all of that. And so as governor, for example, the Quick Action Closing Fund, do you put $50 million into that every year, or do you reduce it to $45 million so we can increase the reimbursement rate for the counties? We have to wait to see what our surplus will be at that time, what our revenue projections will be. So there's a lot of options there, and the worst time to make all of those decisions is in the middle of a campaign. But clearly, you've got to balance all of those different needs and determine how much money to fund each of those, how much to put into pre-K, how much to put into the county reimbursement. So we'll balance those as we go forward and see exactly what the surplus will be and what's available at that time.
You mentioned the circle of county officials that you'd like to maybe have some sort of a continuing partnership with. How would you select which counties would be good to work with on something like that? How often would you want to be meeting with them as far as that circle?
Well, the Attorney General has this of the United States. You have U.S. attorneys that were selected, and you need to select the county judges to be your key core of advisors that will be representative of small county and larger urban counties, as well as representing different interests, obviously bipartisan in nature, but you select a representative group of county judges that would serve as your counselors and key advisors so that you make sure you hear the ground truth when you make decisions that impact the government that's so close to the people.
Could in fiscal 2016, it's a theoretical question, but you're going to be governor, it's not theoretical. Could the state government fund your $100 million tax cut as well as absorb a repeal of the private option?
I don't think when you talk about the private option, we've got to figure out the cost impacts down the road. We've got the beneficial part of the private option in terms of our budget, with the higher reimbursement, with helping us fill some gaps in our budget. But down the road, we're going to have a real hole in it. And so I think you've got to look at the long-term costs. I've always said that is one of the key ingredients as to what our ultimate decision will be made as the cost impacts on the state. We see a tremendous amount of benefit to our hospitals and to expanding health care. You always have to look at the cost of it. As to the tax cuts, how they fit in and when they're triggered and when they come into play, and you've got to balance it with the tax cuts that are already in place by the legislature, and then as to the decisions that are made on the private option. So these are unknowns based upon more information that we're going to have next year, and we'll have to, the governor's going to be starting with the budget process, which I'm grateful of, but let me assure you, on the 2016 budget, I will be starting anew with that in January after the November election.
So, some people see the private option as essentially a federal subsidy to help fund these tax cuts. Do you not see it that way?
No, I don't think you should have it. I know
that's the way essentially it's been explained.
Well, that's how Governor Beebe has explained it.
You disagree?
What? You're saying that the tax cuts, a portion of the tax cuts that the legislature got this last time was a swap, was be able to be funded because of the private option savings?
That's the way the legislature and Beebe explained it. Is there...
Well, I start all over with this. You could say that the growth in state revenues through natural growth in state revenues funded the tax break, and the private option was just a bonus. You could look at that. You could compare it anyway. That's the comparison they made. That's the.
So you just think that's spin?
No, I'm not.
I'm just trying to understand.
I'm saying that I will take a fresh look at that, and that's part of their decision-making process. But whenever I come into office, you have a private option in place. You have projected tax cuts, as well as my initiatives on tax cuts, and we start afresh then. I don't have to retrace the steps and part of the decision-making process before you start afresh.
One more question?
You had touched on, as far as the behavior programs for violent offenders. Can you just explain a little bit more about that process between once they're, out, what you would like to see, and how you would help fund that?
I break up criminals in two categories. One that are not going to change. They're violent. They're ultimately going to be incarcerated for a very long time. Those you can't change their behavior because their behavior pattern has been set for their life. And you got to keep them incarcerated. But there's others that make a mistake, they pay a price, they want to get back to work and be productive. You've got to make sure that you encourage that behavior, give them an opportunity for a job. There's others that come out and they find limited options. And those are the ones that you can help encourage the right behavior. You can make sure they're held accountable if they're tempted to go back into drugs. You can make sure that they're held accountable if they don't show up to work while they're on parole, if they don't behave and report to their parole officer, or they commit another minor crime. You hold them accountable, and that helps change behavior. And so ultimately, when you start changing behavior, then you're not going to be incarcerating as many because you've changed behavior. And that's the ultimate goal of a criminal justice system that I would design.
Hutchinson said that you've said that you're running to save the state Democratic Party. That's why you're running for governor. Have you said that?
He said what?
He said that you've said that you're running for governor to save the Democratic Party. Are you? I mean, have you said that?
Let me be clear. I am a conservative, pro-business, pro-gun, God-fearing Arkansas Democrat, but I am not running to be governor for the Democratic or Republican parties. I am running to be governor for all the people in this great state, and I pledge to work with anyone who will work with me to make this state an even better place to live, to work, and to raise a family.
So have you said that, or haven't you? You didn't answer the question.
What was the question?
Have you said that you're running for governor to save the Democratic Party? Have you said that?
I think that the Republicans have made a lot of gains in Arkansas in the last few years. I think it's important that we have a two-party system, and I think it's important that we bring the Democratic Party in Arkansas. There's a huge difference between the Democratic Party in Arkansas and the National Party. We're more in the middle. I think people see that with me. They know I'm conservative. They know I'm pro-business. They know I'm pro-gun. And look, Republicans have made gains in recent years. I don't think the majority of the people in this state want us to have a one-party Republican state. I think they want some checks and balances. I think that's why when Senator Lincoln was going down to defeat in 2010, Governor Beebe won all 75 counties at about the same time as the Republicans were taking over the state legislature. I think it's important to have some balance. I think Governor Beebe's provided that balance, and I think most people know that I too will provide that balance and work with everyone.
So the answer is no or yes?
I have no idea what I've been talking 20 speeches a day for a year and a half. I mean, if you find where I said that, then I probably did. If you didn't, then I probably didn't. I don't know.
Mr. Hutchinson also.
I don't know how I phrase things every time. I'm just a country boy. You know?
Okay.
I do the best I can.
He said it, so I thought I was just trying to get a straight answer.
Well, if he said it, it's got to be true. Just like all these attack ads against me. You know.
Well, Mr. Hutchinson said you stepped off of your nonpartisan tack and went on the attack today, and he said that's what you'd expect from someone who's running from behind. And what's your reaction to that comment?
I got in this race 8 points down. As of yesterday, it's tied 44-44, and it sounds like he's getting desperate and scared to me. Look, I don't care whether or not I hurt Congressman Hutchinson's feelings or whether he hurts mine. This is not about us. This is about the future of Arkansas. This is about the people here in Arkansas. I've got a positive vision for the future of this state. I want to improve education, create more and better paying jobs, put an end to domestic violence and child abuse, and do all this in a fiscally responsible way. And I've got detailed plans at my website, MikeRoss.com, to accomplish that. All he has is bullet points on what he wants to do for the future. We have detailed plans in just about every area that you'd be interested in.
What exactly did the Hutchinson campaign say about you that was a lie?
There's TV ads that try to tie me to Pelosi and Obama, when the truth is National Journal has consistently listed me as one of the most independent members of Congress. I earned an A+ rating from the National Rifle Association. The only time Nancy Pelosi had an opponent, I gave the nominating speech for her opponent with her sitting on the front row. They're trying to convince people that I'm something that I'm not. I'm a conservative, pro-business, pro-gun, God-fearing Arkansas Democrat.
How much do you want to increase county reimbursement in Turbine?
How much do I want to increase? You know, it depends on, like I said, I'm a fiscal conservative. We're going to balance the budget. We're going to fund education, Medicaid, public safety. And then as we have revenue growth, we're going to implement a plan for lower and fairer taxes while meeting the needs of the state. And I've committed, as I did earlier just a few minutes ago, I've committed to meet with the Association of Counties and to work with them to try to improve their situation. But I made no promises.
So you wouldn't necessarily increase it?
I will try. Like I said, we're gonna, you know, look, I'm planning on winning this election, so I'm not gonna make a promise that I cannot keep. I think they're getting the short end of the stick. They need more money. I understand that. I used to be on a quorum court in a very rural, poor county. But as governor, I've got to first balance the budget. We got to fund education, Medicaid, public safety, and after we do those things, we will balance the needs of the counties, the needs of the state with lower and fairer taxes, and I think we can accomplish it all.
What, is there any, did you give people a hint of whether you're going to, the state can afford any tax cuts in fiscal year 16 if you were governor?
With what now?
Can the state afford any tax cuts? I mean, can you say that maybe
Well,
your first year would be 20 million or
You know,
or $3?
here's what DF&A tells me that after adequacy funding for education, we may be looking at a $40 million net revenue growth. AAC's tax cut plan, he's promised to cut $100 million in year one, $100 million in cuts, $40 million in net revenue growth, leaves a $60 million deficit. I'm not going to make promises like that because you do the math on that. Basically what he's promising is I'm going to cut your taxes and create a $60 million deficit my first year in office, or I'm going to cut services by $60 million. That's what Governor Brown back in Kansas did, and they've got a $300 million plus deficit now. I'm going to be a fiscal conservative. We're going to balance the budget. We're going to fund education, Medicaid, public safety, and then as we have revenue growth, we're going to balance the needs of the state with my plan to implement lower and fairer taxes.
Who at DF&A said that there'd be net revenue growth of 40 million after adequacy?
I don't know. I mean, right.
If I call over there, who do I call?
Tim Leathers.
Okay.
You know, it's my understanding there's about 85 million in revenue growth, about 45 million is going to be needed for adequacy. Leaves about 40 million.
And that's after the tax cuts that they.
My policy director had a conversation with someone at the DF&A, and that was the number they gave them, but I'm not sure of the name, but I'm sure Tim would know.
Okay.
You mentioned tougher, smarter prison sentences for the violent criminals. Talk about how you do that if we're going to be keeping them behind bars longer. How are we going to be funding that when we're trying to cut back on those expenses?
Well, we got to have tougher sentences for violent, repeat offenders, those involved in firearm thefts, but we also have to have smarter sentences, and that's how we balance that. We've got to start locking up the people we're afraid of instead of the people we're mad at. We've got to have some smarter sentencing. We've got to have some alternative sentencing for some of the nonviolent first-time offenders. Some folks get in trouble with the law because they're addicted to drugs. We're spending $25,000 a year sending them to prison, turning them into professional criminals when what they really need is drug treatment. Others simply need to get a GED. Others need to learn a skill, a trade, get a certification, become a welder, a diesel mechanic, and be able to get a job. Look, there's always going to be bad people out there. That's why we've got to ensure we've got prison beds for the bad people. There's a lot of people that I think, you know, given a second chance, they can become productive citizens like the rest of us.
The jury is still out on the need for a new prison, $80 to $100 million prison. You're not convinced that we need a new prison?
Someone's got to show, you know, that'll be up to the legislature, and they're going to have to show me how they would pay for it, and then I will consider it and review it. But I think any new prison in Arkansas, we've got to have meaningful prison reforms tied to it. Look, the Department of Corrections estimates 700 to 1,000 more inmates entering the system every year from now on. The taxpayers in the state cannot afford to continue to build $100 million prisons that cost as much as $25 million to operate. We got to be tougher on the repeat offenders, the violent folks, but we got to be smarter with the others and have smarter sentencing, alternative sentencing programs. And you know, the recidivism rate's close to 50%. One of the things we've got to do is a better job of helping prepare them for the workplace when they get out so they don't go back to a life of crime.
If there's more people coming in, it seems like the jury's in that we do need a new prison.
Well, they're coming in because we're sending a lot of people to prison that ought to be in an alternative sentencing program. That's why I call for more support and increase in parole officers.